Hello and welcome. I am the Letterhack, and with me now is a very special guest from WYCD, also known as Wicked, also known as What You Can Do. It's our old pal, Jake. Jake, how are you? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. I'm messing with you. I'm doing fantastic.
I love the awkward intros. That's great. Thank you.
So excited, man. Very, very much looking forward to this moment. I got to tell you, this conversation.
Me too. Okay, now you and I have cool last names. Some people might call them challenging. Could you please pronounce your last name for the audience?
I sure can. I'll tell you this. Let's just do it. Drogelis.
Jorgelis.
Yes. Can you do? Can I take a whack at yours?
Yeah, go ahead.
Strackbein.
That's pretty good. I mean, I've been in Munich where they said my name and I was like, me?
All right, Americanized. Strackbein.
Yep, that's it. If you're my relatives from Texas, it's Strackbein. And I have some
Okay.
friends from Texas that pronounced it that way and they thought they were doing it wrong. And I was like, that's the Texas pronunciation as far as I'm concerned. So that's fair. Now, here's the other question I have for you.
Okay.
I said our old pal Jake. Now, I used to have a butcher, and the name of the butcher was called Your Butcher Frank. And everyone said my butcher Frank. Do you prefer your old pal Jake or our old pal? Is it interchangeable?
It's really dealer's choice.
Okay, cool.
It's the lump on the bottom of your shoe that you're happy to find out is just gum.
Right. Okay. I
So
just don't want
whatever
to
you
mess up
call it,
your
it's fine.
branding.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I always try and match my guest in some way. Pick out the right t-shirt or something like that. And so anyway, I'm happy. I used to
Nailed
be a
it.
tie guy. I used to agonize in a good way over shirt and tie combos and I'd have them all laid out for every day of the week, right? When I worked in the office in the corporate world. And it was a considered look. That's what I was
Yeah.
after. And I
Yeah.
find that very appealing about you and your style. And so I was like, this will be my chance
Let me let
to
me
do
let
it again.
me throw this at clearly you will be aware of this, but let me throw it at the audience if y'all haven't had this experience. If you can scrape together enough money to go to like a second time around store and get yourself some nice clothes that aren't for a specific occasion. They're just these are the nice clothes I'm going to wreck clothes. Go out and wear those around town and look at how your experiences change, and it's delightful.
Yeah, especially if you live in a college town, there are a lot of college kids selling suits for drinking money. And so their parents
Really?
bought them a nice suit. Yeah. And because I lived in Boulder, Colorado for a long time, and the thrift stores were filled with suits that had been worn like twice, you know?
Whoa.
Yeah. Good suits
Yeah.
too. But
I
they say
it's a fun
the
experience.
clothing makes the man. I
Mm,
think the person makes the clothing really, and because you feel
yes.
good, look good, feel good is what I would always
Yeah. And
right?
there's a there's a kind of look that happens with a suit when you wear the hell out of it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I like that. And you see that with people that have they've been forced into a suit as part of like a working man's job, like a journalist for one. Uh but just a lawyer, like a defense attorney, or a public defender, a bounty hunter in an anime. Like
Right. No, yeah, you're
it's a
right.
fun look.
It's cool. Okay, I have some drawing to do tonight. So
Ooh.
here's what I want to do. You're in the hot seat. That's what we call it. You're gonna
Mhm.
watch me draw you. I'm in the hot seat with you. I'm gonna watch you watching me draw you. Um, and while I get in on the drawing, I should tell people tonight we are going to be talking about gerrymandering. And I should say, I'm kind of going to let you talk about gerrymandering because it's not my thing, but we'll get into that in a bit. Um, First, while I start the drawing, I was hoping that you could give us your origin story. Please tell us how you got into broadcasting and media and how you managed to have your own show on YouTube.
My best buddy Dane and I discovered early on that we could we could, instead of doing work, make movies related to whatever homework assignment we had.
Okay.
And if it was even tenuously related to the thing, that's how we could spend our weekend. So in our adult lives, Dane and I were looking for a way to basically do that again, and we found that in the news. On Unfortunately, you can't do the news without understanding it. And upon understanding it, I felt as though uh, there was an there was a need for organization, for specifically showing people what they can do to change things, because we were on a trajectory which simply needed to change. So I left my probably my favorite job I've ever had, to go do that. But I have to say I've been very lucky, because I have found a way to essentially be a producer again, even though I am in front of the camera.
So did you go to school for this?
Yes, Dane and I went to school together at the same time for it. Before that, we were just various types of con artists, legally, salesmen and what have you. I shouldn't drag my brother Dane down like that. He was a proper working man. But yes, we went to school for it. But let me tell you, if you're at home and you have no educational background that reflects the news, but you want to get into it, just show up at a station. Just drop off your resume at a station, and you can probably get hired doing something. It is one of the last industries where that is true. You'll just make no money.
So
All the education you received was nearly pointless.
do you get a lot of on the job training then?
It's almost entirely on the job training. Yeah. And even if you have a journalism degree, it's the same thing. It's good. It's not a bad thing to have a journalist degree, but it's like the nuts and bolts of it. First of all, we're still in an era where many stations are trying to figure out how they are going to adapt. So most stations do things at least slightly differently. And also, by the time you learn something, it will have changed. So it's more about your ability to learn and less about what you already have learned. But that's really the soul of news in itself.
When you were doing it for television, were they already trying to move online? Because my
Yes,
theory is that the people who start online are challenging the mainstream media and like legacy media and cable news. And so then you see, well, cable news is trying to do that too, but they were already trying to do that. At what stage was it?
there. When I got in, they were just finally acknowledging that they needed to take the internet seriously. It was like 2015. It was really late to be doing that. And even though they were starting to, they didn't really take it seriously until like years later. So that meant, as like a junior producer, I ended up coming up with. I got to basically be an executive producer, even though I hadn't earned it. Hi, I'm white. I hadn't earned it, but I got to make like a bunch of shows and then assign people to those shows, and they did them. And that was just a side effect of people having no idea what would work, so there was no wrong answers. Now they have an idea. They have a slight idea, and it looks a lot like a YouTube show, for example. But I'll tell you, there is still a ton of room for creativity.
Was it like a old dude in a suit going, guys, we got to do the Twitter? Why aren't we doing the Facebook? Or was it, let's hire somebody who knows what the heck we should be doing? And then It's just a matter of making what we do now apply there, like clips.
You know,
Or was it like embarrassing and cringy, or what did it seem like it was, sensible?
it was sensible, very sensible. The news is I shouldn't generalize that much. Corporate media, like, they are very good at scaling their investment to their ambition. So if their investment was, we are willing to pay, I started off literally as an intern. So they if their investment is, we're only willing to assign one intern to this, then you're going to be covering high school sports, or you're going to be going to the opening of an ice cream shop, or some you're just doing a favor for somebody in the community, essentially. But if you then get a ton of people to watch that, then it upgrades. And they're like, okay, so you're now the senior intern. You have a second intern. Scale this up a little bit. And if you do well enough, and for most people, this is why they leave and hate it, and this is why I truly love it. If you do well enough, they take it away from you. And they say, okay, now we're going to give this to somebody who's been on TV for 15 years, and this is their online segment. But to me, that's the dream.
You were never in front of the camera when you had that job? Because you seem like a natural.
I was constantly in front of the camera, and
Okay.
that's been the bane of my existence. I cannot get away from the camera.
You
Just
don't
because
like
when
it.
I it's I don't want to be unfair to being in front of the camera. I don't want to even talk down about people that enjoy it. It's fun. It really is. But in my opinion, like, you have to understand where I'm coming from, lower your opinion of me highly. I like essentially taking toys and smashing them together. Like, for me, that's fun. I don't want to be the toy. I want, like, pretty people who don't have to worry about how hungover they look, and don't have to watch what they say on their social media and yada yada. I want them to go do this thing I dreamed up, and if you know, if you're building something from scratch and you have and they're not willing to give you employees to do it, then if it involves somebody being on the camera, it's got to be you. There is nobody else. So unfortunately, I wound up on camera a ton, but it's not my joy.
Wait, is there like archival footage out there we could be watching?
There's tons. I mean, I did this. What I'm doing now, I essentially did for uh, WILX in Grand Haven. I had a radio show for a while. It was not quite the same, but that was in WGHN. And for WDIV in Detroit, I did a sports show, even though I have no knowledge of sports. And I'm just constantly, like, there's episodes and episodes. I will say though, ooh, you nailed the suit jacket so well. I love that jacket too.
Yeah.
For the sports show, I'm going to just name drop somebody here. Madeline Allen is somebody I thought ought to be famous, and I don't know if she's gotten there yet, but I haven't heard about it, so I assume not. But I was essentially trying to make Madeline Allen famous. That was my side project at the time. So you'll see me co-hosting often with a bewildered-looking ginger-haired gal who is a close personal friend and remains so.
Well, I was going to ask you if you had ever done radio, and you have. So I was on the right track there. Are these people trying to get you back?
Sometimes, and in some ways, but it's such a weird industry that I wouldn't read too much into it. It's like, if you hear about somebody leaving a news station, it can be dramatic and a scandal, but usually it's not. And there's just an understanding that you'll work for one company 1 year and another company the next, and then you'll be my boss and mentor, Donna Harper. Um, she left the company that I got started at like 4 times, and wound up coming back. So I've had a couple of people saying like, "Hey, we need a producer. Are you still looking to do that?" But that doesn't mean they're like, "Oh, we need that Jake Magic." They're just like, "We got a slot to fill."
How, I'm not going to ask you how it paid. What I'm
Terrible.
getting
I'm
at.
happy to talk about that.
Well, so
Garbage.
what I'm getting at is like, are you better off now financially?
No. Dirt poor. I
What's the appeal? Why do this and not that?
because come on, the world's collapsing. Like we truthfully, I tried to make the problems I was seeing leftist politics address a part of my news coverage back in the day. But I mean, it was local news, and it wasn't an opinion show, and it wasn't what I had agreed to do for the companies that I was working for when it comes down to it. So I do this now because I feel it has to be done. And truth be told, I enjoy the hell out of it. But I am doing it based entirely off a nest egg that I managed to save up while doing being like a 28-year-old intern and then working jobs that pay you like poverty wages for 7 years.
Have you always had these same politics?
No,
Progressive, left leaning, or leftist views?
it's a great question. I've had let me tell you about this cat, Matthew. Uh, he asks good questions. I've had these inclinations. I think like many Americans, I didn't pay enough attention to have strong political opinions, but the principles were always there. And they're not terribly complicated either. People should be treated the same generally by default. Criminals shouldn't be allowed to get away with crimes, but also if the same crime keeps happening over and over again, then society needs to address the structure of it. Whatever part of the political spectrum the correct answers fall on, I don't really care what the label is, but I do find to my growing not even horror, just surprise, I suppose, the hippies were right. Like every time I look at something brutal with brutal honesty, I end up discovering that usually the most progressive pitch for how to handle it has the most grounding in reality and facts.
Yeah, my thing was because I didn't always have these same exact politics, but I was like, wait a second. I thought by conservatism we meant smaller government, not just privatize everything, right? And so that
Yes.
was an eye opener for me pretty early on. And
Yeah.
and then it got to the point where I was like, well, I mean, there's horrible people on all sides of this thing, right? Like and the establishment itself, it's not enough to just be like, I'm anti-establishment. You have to be anti whoever is anti-progressive. That's how I look at the establishment, right? And so you can call them
Yes.
neoliberals, the establishment, whatever you want. There are people out there who are trying to maintain a low intensity democracy. And
There's a
that's
reason.
something, yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that word came into play, though, neoliberal. That it's a good descriptor of what the establishment is, and it is essentially the problem right now. Tom Hartman did an amazing breakdown of why that is and the history of how that came to be, but essentially summing up a whole book in 15 seconds. Uh, a survivor from Hitler's Germany thought that the problem was too many people had the right to vote. Took all the wrong answers from the Holocaust, brought it over to the United States and Western Europe, and convinced everybody that the way to get things done is to just let the dollar rule us. Let whoever has the most dollars be considered the most right. And unfortunately, at first, we couldn't prove, we being everybody who doesn't have the most dollars, couldn't prove that that isn't a helpful way to run things. And now that it's pretty clearly the case, unfortunately, the people running things have the most dollars. So we will have to. Nah, actually, we are in an era where people already are realizing whether they have the language to express it in detail or not. That's the case. And now we're just arguing over the correct way to correct that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put the drawing away. I don't know what the color ends up looking like on everyone else's screen. It always looks a little bit too washed out for me, but um, trust
Before
me.
you put it away, can
Yeah.
I take a moment here? I have always seen myself as more of a Bullock than a Bruce Wayne. But I have, if you were to tell a 10-year-old, your old pal Jake, that one day a no skilled professional artist is going to draw him in the Bruce Timm style, that I would have been like, great. And then I assume I retire. What else is there to do in life?
Yeah, this is it.
So
It's
thank
pinnacle
you. So
stuff, right?
it is. It is. Thank you, man.
Well, maybe one day you'll come back on and I'll draw you again. Um,
Hell yeah.
so here's along
On
the
April
same
1st, you got to let me draw you, and it's just gonna be
oh,
like a stick figure.
those count. Um, have you ever seen my birthday week on well, see, now you're not a big social media guy, so you may have missed this. But what I do on Twitter and now also Threads and Blue Sky and everything, I will I allow and I invite everyone else to draw their favorite lefty media person. And some people will just like draw me, which is fun, right? Like my last guest drew me, which was I totally
Of
unexpected and very
course,
fun.
that's you gotta.
Yeah, it's fun. And so anyway, yeah, that could
That's a
totally
good
happen.
idea, though, man. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, keep it going.
Let me
And
tell you
so
this.
oh, and then you find out
You're
who the
trying to
artists are.
host a show here, and I keep
No, go
I
ahead.
keep forgetting and not. You go ahead, please.
No, no, no. Go you.
I think that one of the big issues the left has is that there is, because neoliberalism is trying to defend itself, there is no structure set up for popularizing leftist content.
Hmm.
So there is Ben Shapiro will get a paycheck until his show is self-sustaining. So will Steven Crowder. We won't. So how like we can't just not answer that. I hear people acknowledging that all the time, but we have to then do something. It's got to be, in my opinion, the kind of thing you're doing. It's got to be relying on our creativity to popularize important messages, and exactly that, encouraging other folks to draw their favorite leftists. Beautiful.
Right. I had an idea once. Okay, so let me frame the question. Your video descriptions range from very detailed to like a newsletter, like a Substack, right? Have you ever done that or considered that?
I have. um, Truth be told, though, I have a very meticulous um, way of going about things, and I have a plan which I am currently following, and am not in terror. I have no interest in going away from it. I would much rather have 10 views on a video and know exactly where they came from, as opposed to 1,000 views and not really be able to get any new information from it.
Yeah.
So once I got to the point where I was monetized, I was like, great, great. All right. If I need to do a big drive or whatever, I now have the setup to do that. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying the hell out of privilege, essentially. And I have a little nest egg set aside. I want to work on the YouTube channel and just craft that until I'm very confident in that product. And then if there's a Substack, if there's a this, that, or the other, then I'll start doing that.
There was a blog called or is called Muddy Colors. And it's it's like it started out as like 3 or 4 commercial illustrators, fairly well known, and they grew. And my vision is to have something like that for folks like us. where, hey, you got something, publish it. If not,
Yes.
there's 3 or 4 other people who are going to be publishing, right? And
We
it's
can
like you could have
yeah.
designated times. I don't know.
Imagine you can like you're doing the kind of thing that I think is the necessary future. Like setting up structures that will make it possible to create this content,
Yeah.
including financial structures. I love the idea that you're like the only real reason to have a publishing house, for example, is so that a professional somewhere says, yeah, these people you're about to see are all good enough to be professionals. I have declared it because I have hired them. That's essentially what you're doing here. You're just saying like these creators are creators who are worth watching, so come check it out. And then you're not having to pay for the entire staff of a publishing house.
Right. I didn't even think of that. That's a great
It's
that's a great idea I had.
It is, and similarly, I'm going to take advantage of you being in the hot seat too.
Okay.
I I don't want to be Aretha Franklin. I love Aretha Franklin, but I want to be Barry Gordy. You know, that's my Detroiter of choice.
Okay.
Uh, so my general plan, I will always do the show I'm currently doing because that's I feel it's important. I love doing it. I like hanging out with those cats, but I want to build shows with the intention of people stealing them
Oh,
and doing it better. Guy that made basketball and then got had a losing record as a coach. That would be the greatest honor. So
yeah.
I'm going to start rolling out. I've already done a junior version of it, but I'm going to start rolling out concept shows and just doing them a little bit. But the idea being like, hopefully somebody with a little bit less quietly furious energy can can sell it better.
Huh.
And I'd love to screw it. Let's have you decide right here and now what we're going to do next. Here's 3 pitches,
Okay.
elevator pitches each.
Okay.
You tell us which one sounds like you would want to watch the most.
Okay.
Wicked Cookout. It's using systems like this, and the audience. We play music, and the people on camera dance to the music. The audience votes for the best dancer, and in between songs, the best dancer can talk about whatever they want to talk about.
Okay.
The idea being, I don't think Steven Crowder would wind up on it all that often.
Okay.
Thing number 2, Wicked World Wrestling Entertainment, a debate show where if you go over the time, whoever is playing The Undertaker that week, who is somebody who is a feared debater on par with Sam Cedar type, can come in and take over for a round.
Okay. I really like that.
Right?
Okay.
And we could
that's
do
good.
face first. And you kept saying KFAB in some of your other videos.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't we just lean into that? Because
Okay.
I do
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the debates. So let's have fun with
So,
it. And
what is what's the initial time limit? Just curious. Have you thought about
I
that? Is
would
it
really,
10 minutes or an hour?
I mean, I would choose it based more on what would be entertaining than what would be.
Be nice to see them sweat if they're like, I got 15
Yeah,
minutes and then somebody else is coming in. I,
it's got to be like pro wrestling. Like I think it's got to be there's got to be a quick back and forth.
yeah.
So and we want to give people lots of opportunities to accidentally go over the time
Is there a
because
moderator?
yes, and there's a moderator. And the thing is,
You can mute
the
them if you want.
yeah, you can.
I
And I
would
think
love
they
that.
get here's the deal. The person who's waiting in the background, like let's say I annoy Matt Bender enough that he agrees to do this.
Okay.
The person waiting in the background doesn't have to come in the second you're over the
Oh,
time. It just like there's a flashing number on the screen and it's a risk to go over the time. But it
hmm.
might be worth taking it if you think if you're ending strong. but Binder might come out with the folding chair. You don't know.
I
And
love this.
it
Yeah.
turns that gish gabble from a thing where lefties are annoyed to like, ooh. Plus,
That's
if
a
you
good
play
one.
everybody in with their show's music, if you
Oh
play
yeah.
those folks
See?
in, imagine how terrified somebody would be if it's like if we're doing like old school wrestling where you can invite the audience on for fun and they're going way over their time and all of a sudden you hear, "Oh man, the Letterhack."
Right.
That reaction
I
face.
love that. I love it. Okay.
Last
This
the
is
la- last one.
I don't even care about the first idea anymore. It wasn't
Okay.
bad, but this is too good. So what's the third one?
All right. Last one. It's super simple. It's called Black Sabbath, and it's nothing but me deciding whether I'm going to do a show about black folks or a show about metal. And the entire show is just
Hey,
me
cool.
trying to decide. First episode, we're starting off with Death, the band from Detroit, which is
Okay. I
some people
love
credit with inventing metal.
yes. That I love that documentary. Isn't
Yeah,
there
you see
there's a
it. All
whole
right. Yeah.
documentary about them, right?
Yep. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saw it, so I'm geeked up on it now.
Yeah, cool. It's got to be the second one.
So you have to decide. I'm assuming it's the wrestling.
It is because that's already something that I think is a viable concept is other like rotating cast of characters, different guests every week, right? And pitting them against each other. That's the next level to what I'm trying to do. That sounds entertaining
Think
as
about how
hell.
much fun goofy bastards like you and I could have doing this. Like if it's a face versus face thing, I would want to cut a promo where I'm like, "You are coming in hot where you're talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
Medicare for all being paid by the
That'd be, and then you could do, in the right context, you could do live shows and you could
Oh,
really play that up. You know
absolutely.
how Andy Kaufman used to wrestle women back in the day?
Yes.
Did you know that was a thing?
Oh yeah.
My English teacher in let's see, I guess it was 10th grade, wrestled him on SNL. She was a pro wrestler. Her name was Miss Peckingham. And her
That's so
dad was a
cool.
pro wrestler. And so she was like she wasn't a pro wrestler. She was a college wrestler, female wrestler. And she
But
wrestled him.
still.
And I remember
That's
she showed us the video because, of course, we're all like, no, you didn't. And she's like, here's the video. She pops in this VHS and shows it. And there was a moment in the hallway where they were like in the hallway behind the scenes at SNL in the studio doing like the I'm gonna get in your face thing, like slapping each other around. It's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, it's wild.
that
So I would love to do we should stop talking about it now because I'll keep talking about it all night. That's a great idea.
I'm just gonna throw in one more thing because
Oh, go
now
ahead.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it,
do
and I
it.
won't think about anything else. Imagine the social media cutting promos on
I know.
social
Yeah.
media and people
Be
being like,
great.
why is Emma Vigland drinking water and spitting it in the air? This is insane.
This would be really good when everyone who is because everyone takes their role very serious, right? They should,
Mhm.
right? They take their show serious, their role serious. I foresee a point that this comes to where everyone's like, yeah, nah, I'm ready to have more fun than serious now. So
Yeah.
this would be where this idea comes in.
Beautiful. All right, that's what's folks. Yeah, I'll figure out how we're gonna name it, but Wicked Wrestling's coming up for sure.
I love this. We're going to talk about this more. Do you know Kowalski from Nebraska?
Yes, that
He
fine Nebraskan. Yes, I know him.
sent in a super chat saying, "I'll fight anyone, anytime in the cornfields." I do not think anyone want to take
Woo.
him up on that. That's insane.
Hell yes. I've never understood that. Like somebody once asked me something along the lines of like, "Oh, but would you do it if Mike Tyson would beat you up?" Why would you not want to get a whipping from Mike Tyson? That'll no
Um,
whipping you'll ever get after that will
so
ever compare.
my question to Kowalski is, how much moonshine have we drunk before the fight? Because now I'm in.
Kowalski, you got
If
to
I don't
come up.
remember it, it's gonna be great.
Let me tell you. First of all, yes. Second of all, Kowalski, you got to come up with a wrestling version of your persona and you can absolutely,
I
or you can
just
be on this thing regardless.
I
But
just imagine
yes,
him throwing one haymaker after another and actually connecting. Like, I'm pretty scrappy, but I can just imagine seeing it coming, having plenty of time to get out of the way, and it connects. Anyway, he's
like
the
Kowalski, he's big enough that he'd have fun and keep you perfectly safe. Like, he'd do one of these, the
yeah. He
wrestling.
says enough to send a car into low Earth orbit. My God, that's the moonshine answer. I hope, not the haymaker reference.
Either, both. Yes, he's
Okay,
in.
I'm having a great time with this interview, by the way. Usually
Same.
I look at the time and I'm like, oh, better get to my next question. I really don't care, but I will. Uh, Let me ask you this. Is there one person out there who can instantly change your way of thinking on a topic? Like, you think you've got whatever it is, some issue or policy all figured out. Somebody comes with some alternate take and you're like, well, now I got to rethink it. Is there anybody out there?
There's almost no one who can't. But there are people who do with great frequency, and I want to thank them. Wicked Foxy Dragon, Pinkerbell, Wireless Mike, Dominico, the Letterhack. Basically, there's almost. I'm happy to have my opinion changed, and I think you should be. I think if you're in this business, you should be trying to have your opinion changed. And to in the spirit of the question, I'll also toss in. I will from time to time go to my mama and say the most controversial political opinion I have, and if I can't look her in the eyes, I'm like, it's got to go.
Oh,
It's got to
okay.
go.
Is that why you do what you do to learn and evolve and
That's definitely why we lean into the live show as opposed to pre-recorded. Because I like the anti-corporatist the other day literally just like logicked out as we were talking what I was saying. And he's like, all right, in this case, I forget the details of what we were talking about. Because like, in this case, it works, but it opens up the door for authoritarianism. And is that really a standard you want to set? And like live, we just talked about it. And the answer was no. No, it wasn't. Uh, the show will forever have a live element for that reason, for real time corrections, because we have the smartest audience in the internet on the progressive media, in my opinion.
I really well, first of all, I want the anti-corporatist to always pay attention to the road, right? Don't chat
True,
behind the wheel, okay, buddy?
true.
But
Modern day
also,
cowboy.
wait till you're at a way station or something. Um, but also, I like that you reference being live versus videos, pre-recorded videos.
Yeah,
When I do a video, it's unedited. It's just because they had the guest couldn't make the live time, and I was like, I will
sure.
pre-record and I'll put it live at my normal time. It's not because I'm like, I really want it to be A, B, and C, and it's still anything can happen. And I never really, I guess I always knew this in my mind, but I never really looked at it as going live is it's not a risk, it's deliberate unknown. It's deliberately going
Yeah,
into the unknown. And you could tell I'm just formulating this thought as it comes to me
good.
here because this is new. But it's like this is the first time that I've thought of it as being live really does let people know there's no net,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And
Hmm.
I think specifically if you delve into the realm of politics, that's important.
Yeah.
If you're saying I think we should do things this way and it's going to affect everybody, then everybody should have at least the opportunity to chime in. And you know, if you're sure about it, you got nothing to be afraid of. And if at the very least you're sure that you're coming from an honest place, you shouldn't have anything to be afraid of.
Yeah.
It's just if you're trying to convince people that you're smarter than you are, or that you know more than you do, or that yada yada yada. And I've chosen to wear a mustache, so no one's gonna have any illusions.
That's awesome. You do have so like I think I said on air, but definitely said before we started. You have a very put together look. It's very,
Thank you.
classic guy, and not just, one of these fellas that's like, well, wear a tie. Should you? I mean, you have dirty sneakers on. Like, I can tell, like, this is a put together look. It's considered. And here's what I want to
And I'll
know.
tell you, it's also for me.
See,
I think
nice.
tell you.
It's awesome. See, um, I do not have my Allen Edmonds on right now, but they're nearby.
I love the tie clip. And I love the tie also.
Yeah,
You're killing it, man. I appreciate it.
this is the bobby pin. So
It's a bobby pin?
it was modeled after that. It's more
Oh,
substantial, but
I
it's
was going to say.
J. Crew. Is where I got that
Ooh,
from.
nice.
The tie is, I forget how to pronounce it. It's one of those outlets. They have stores all over the place, but they're mostly online. Charles T. Rit or something. I forget how to pronounce it, but they're really good at being like, if you get 3 shirts, you get 2 ties for free. Throw in the cufflinks. You know what I mean? So there was like, they
Yeah.
were really good about that. I'll send you a link
Hell
if
yeah,
they're still
please
around.
do.
I'm sure they are. But anyway, they're real good about it. If it doesn't fit, send it back. So where I'm getting though, where I'm going to is your look is as put together and dialed as your presentation. It's very well thought out. It's all considered and
Thank
it's
you.
very thoughtful. And I want to know how much of it is fun or is it just work?
Oh, fun. Fun. First of all, I don't want my best dressed day in the casket. Second of all, it's,
point.
I love a suit. We can the only reason we're not wearing capes right now is that nobody normalized it in time. So if I could be like, dramatic and what have you, completely.
Yeah.
So for the suit wearing, there's that. But also when it comes to putting together the show, what usually happens is I see somebody talking about something I care about, and then I find the slightest, like, I decide I want to do something and I find the slightest obstacle and I get offended that it's not already taken care of for me.
Hmm.
And then I go build the show that I wish somebody had built for me, and that becomes the show. So if for example, tonight I'm gonna tell your audience most likely to Google something, but like, if it's something that only needs to be Googled, if it's the same thing that needs to be searched by everybody, then the person putting together the information should take care of that beforehand.
Hmm.
It's
Okay.
it's like it's like a chef coming to you and being like, "All right, here's the batter and here's the frosting, and all you got to do is bake this cake and you're good. The oven's right over there." Well, man, I came to the restaurant, so you bake the cake and what have you.
That's
So
how I
that is
feel.
why it is the way it is.
It's how I feel about self-checkout lines. When they're like, "Oh, this machine's not working. Oh, let me show you what you did wrong." It's like, you don't show me, man. You're the
Just you do the thing.
just check
This
me
is
out.
what
So, um,
this is why I've come to the food warehouse.
exactly. So along these same lines, you cite all of your sources and make sure that your work is credible and backed up. Like you really do. I watched a
Thank you.
few of your videos and then, well, you're welcome. But I mean, this is a credit to you and your audience because your audience is no doubt come to expect this from you, right? So you're consistent.
Yes.
Um, do you think that everyone covering the news and politics, even if just by playing clips and reacting to other people's interviews that they did, do you think that they all should adhere to a degree of journalistic standards or integrity?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
there any place for people who don't? Like, let's just talk about on the online left. Like the people who are just doing it for clicks and drama, do they have a place in all this?
One can be made, one does not currently exist.
Okay.
If you're going to not cite your sources, it has to be crystal clear that your show is not to be trusted. There's a guy. There's a guy. Yeah, I take it back. There is one person who does. Owen Morgan from Telltale and Telltale Fireside Chat. He specifically says, "Don't trust anything I say unless you've looked it up yourself," and that annoys me. But that's enough of a disclaimer that I'm not morally against it. And by the way, that guy makes fantastic content. He's an
Make a note.
ex-Mormon who talks about it.
Oh,
But
interesting.
but oh yeah. But if you do this and you say a thing is true, I think you have an obligation, because the ability is there. You have an obligation to show why you believe it's true. So if you, even if you're an opinion show and you say, my opinion is this, you have an obligation to show where your opinion came from so people can judge its value on its own.
So that brings us to tonight's conversation and why we're talking about it. We're going to talk about gerrymandering, like I said, but here's how it came about. I had a call-in show and I was live. So I was, like we were saying, I was just kind of at risk, right? And I don't know what people want to talk about. It's not like I throw out topics. And even if I do, they could talk about whatever they want. I don't mind. But gerrymandering came up. And, you know, I didn't even bother to go back and look at the context or like to revisit this moment. It was enough for me to see that at the same time that I was out loud admitting I don't know enough about it, people in my chat were like, Matt, you should really bring somebody on who knows about this. And I was like, you're right. I have no right to be talking about this stuff if I haven't prepared. And I feel like that. Like if you were asking me about The Godfather and I didn't just watch all 3 movies, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about it without being like, I should really do some. Yeah, I've seen it a million times, but it's not fresh in my mind. So,
I want to give you some room here, because in fairness, the style of your show is different. The presentation of your show is different. You're not saying come here for answers. You're saying come here for a drawing. You talk about fascinating political things. You have secondary effects, which I think are very intentional and are excellent. But you're not the one saying, like, I know this and that.
Right.
So don't feel bad if you didn't do that.
I won't. And do you need to get that?
Over
Okay.
No, okay. It's fine.
So my thing is that I use it as an opportunity to be like, this is I love having I have guests on the show. This is it, and this will be the opportunity to bring somebody on who can talk about this stuff. And the reason why I invited you on is because you don't only talk about this stuff, and I hadn't even really, like, you told me about the video, but I said, it's got to be Jake, because he will not only talk like anybody. Yeah, we could just sit here and talk about it, but I want to know what people can do about it. And so then I was like, okay, so this is the exact right person to have on. Let me see if he can talk about gerrymandering. You linked me to a video segment you did on it. You have talked about it. You had all these links in the description of that video, which are in the description of this video, and we'll get to them. But then I was like, okay, this is how this whole thing should work. And this is my line of questioning, sort of loosely led up to this moment, that I have this show to interview people like you and talk about what you do. And you have a show to talk about these things and what people can do. And this is a great crossover event. That's what we call it in comic books, right?
Hell yeah.
This is essentially like, I'm giving us a lot of credit here, but this is like Batman and Superman in one book. Okay. And so I do my thing and you do your thing at the same time, and both audiences benefit. And then somebody comes along later who doesn't know about either one of us. Look at this, right? So if we do a good enough job talking about this, this will be a great way for me to, and here, I'll just say it now, we should have you back on to talk about other things, right?
Happily.
There's going to be all kinds of election stuff coming up. I've seen people already in the chat very early on were like, please talk about ranked choice voting. I don't know if that'll come up, but why not do a whole show on that, right? So Anyway, next time we can skip the whole interview thing and just get right to the topic. But so food for thought. But let's do this.
Mm.
So I through your links, I discovered the Brennan Center for Justice.
Yes.
And they have proved to be very resourceful on this subject. They say from their website, just so everyone knows, the Brennan Center for Justice is a nonpartisan law and policy institute. We strive to uphold the values of democracy. We stand for equal justice and the rule of law. We work to craft and advance reforms that will make American democracy work for all. Now, I like that they use the word democracy on that a lot because we're talking about gerrymandering. And this is my first question. Like, I want, I have like the definition of gerrymandering here in my notes, but I want to ask you, what is gerrymandering? And can you call the U.S. a true democracy if gerrymandering is a legal thing? And it is illegal. So just what is gerrymandering and is it democratic?
Gerrymandering is drawing districts in a way that favors one class or party. And no, you cannot call any country that allows that within its structure to be a true democracy, or to be called. You cannot call it a true democracy. The answer is just no.
Is there any aspect of gerrymandering that makes sense as like a community or an area changes demographically? Should there be redistricting because this is why I ask. As we'll get into, there are good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. Why are we doing it at all? Is there ever a need?
Redistricting. I don't know how I feel about that. I've wrestled with that. Like, should there just be permanent whatever districts? I don't know.
So that's different than gerrymandering.
Exactly. When redistricting becomes gerrymandering, the difference is intentionality. The difference is essentially when legislators choose their voters, and that you just can't have it, plain and simple.
Okay, let's do this. So this is a graphic I saw on your show. This is from a article by the Washington Post titled "This is the best explanation of gerrymandering you will ever see." And when you showed this, I was like, "Now I've seen this." So just walk us through it. What are we looking at?
All right. So this is a hypothetical district. On the far left, you've got just how it is. This is how people would choose to vote. And the second from the left, you have perfect representation, where people are intentionally drawing the districts in a way that reflects their makeup. And you can see how the vote turns out. Next, you've got I don't know that I necessarily agree with them that this is unfair. It's compact but unfair. I suppose, yeah, it is. Never mind. You've got 5 blue districts and 0 red districts, and all they've done, they've been given the assignment: give us 5 districts that represent the people of this area. And all they've done is
they're manipulating the outcome, right?
Yeah, they've just put the lines in a different place. That's all. And it's a difference of 2 votes, which is huge. And then you have the final part on the right, which is our system as it exists now. And you can see the results are wildly different.
It just right away you're like, you're twisting yourself into a pretzel here, like literally. So
yes,
these are called proportional, cracking, and stacking. Now, I like this version of the graphic because it really does show you, like, everything's simplified and it gives it names. It's not, and so if, I remember somebody I know who's in their 60s said, well, I was like 55 before I knew what gerrymandering was, and that's bad. And so I think if you're going to end up talking to somebody and you want to be able to explain to them, you need these terms. You need to be able to put it in simplest terms that anyone could pretty much draw these. And it's funny because if you had trouble drawing the stacking diagram, that would be a good enough explanation for why it shouldn't exist. Right? So
exactly.
right.
Yes.
So as we say, people should hear everything more than once for it to sink in. So if you don't mind, I would like to cut to a video now of this guy talking about this
Make sure
very
he's
same
handsome.
topic. Okay, hold on. Okay, yeah, he's looking good. Here we go.
Have a look at what gerrymandering actually is. So here you have a hypothetical district with or a hypothetical set of districts that consists of 50 people for simplicity's sake. Figure 1, that's second from the left there, that is perfect representation. So the districts are divided up in such a way that the actual people in there are represented fairly. And in that, you have a blue win. So there's more blue voters than red in this hypothetical place. Then in the second from the right, you've got it gerrymandered in favor of blue. So again, it's a blue win, but that's an unfair map. And it's going to be difficult for red to win ever. And then finally, you have something that looks more like our current system in a lot of states. And that is a map gerrymandered in favor of red. And in this division, even though the votes are the same in every one of these, this is divided up in such a way where red wins. Dishonest practice, but that is what we're dealing with in a lot of states around the country. First, how do you find out if your state is gerrymandered? Well, links in the description. There are resources for this. There's websites that track this. They are linked below.
Yeah, and what are they?
And you can pull up your state in particular and have a look at something like this. What you are looking for is for who draws the districts. Now, there's Alabama. Who draws the districts there? The state legislature. It's not good. That is not what we want. There's a ton of other information available on those sheets. It's like one sheet that's a PDF that you can view for your state. But if your state draws the districts by the people who get elected, state legislature, probably not going to be a very democratic system that you have. What is something you would want to have instead? What would you want to see? Something like this, an independent redistricting commission, something made up of people who aren't getting elected. In Colorado, they've got it where it's a random draw of people who have voted, and it's I think it's 12 members, 4 registered with each of the 2 major parties, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Redistricting
I'm proud of this.
commissions.
Good video.
They're abbreviated to IRCs. That's the way to go. So, do your work. Check your state.
And we should check our states. First of all, I just want to say you can get this information that you were referencing about all 50 states from the Brennan Center for Justice. Link in the description of this video as well as Jake's. And link to Jake's full video in the description of this video. So this is why I wanted to show the video, because we talk about what is it by definition. Is it democratic, right? Can we call ourselves a democracy if we do this, right? And so you could debate that, but generally no, because obviously they're twisting themselves into knots to get their preferred outcome. And then we give it terms, right? Cracking, stacking, proportional, all that. And we learn how to, we start to learn how to talk about it. But then my next natural question is, how can we avoid one party controlling the process? And that is IRCs, independent redistricting commissions. So what I have up on the screen now is your state, Michigan, and I lived in Colorado for over 20 years, and there's a lot of good things about Colorado when it comes to voting. But so now I'm in South Carolina, so we can compare Michigan, which is the preferred method, to South Carolina. Now, this is a little tough to read, so I totally encourage people to this is really step one to getting involved, right, Jake?
Yeah.
To figuring it out and doing something about it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Step one, find out, do you have to do something? For sure. If
Yeah.
you've already got an independent redistricting commission, skip to the last chapter. Last chapter is we get federal rules. That happens in 2024.
Can it be better than an IRC?
Probably.
Ah.
But
What would that even look like? Do you know? I mean,
credit to Wireless Mike, specifically independent redistricting commissions that are by structure bipartisan. So
Mhm.
they have, say, a person from Party A, Party B, and then one person who's either or independent. Maybe there is something better, but does it exist right now? Is it already something that we can jump on board with? No. So independent redistricting commissions are largely successful. They're much better than letting the legislatures draw them.
Another reason why I like your show and your approach so much is because if you were watching, say, MSNBC, they would just go right into, well, we need to figure out how to have more IRCs. And we'd all be like, shit, I have to Google IRC. That you do not leave anything to mystery. Like you,
Shouldn't. Yeah.
I don't even like when people say GOP. Nobody would. Okay, so look at it from a graphic design perspective, which I did for decades. Do you know what JPEG stands for?
Yes.
Oh, you do.
Let me take a whack. I know what a JPEG is.
There you go. You
And
just need to know what it is.
if it would have been GIF, I would have had it better. But I at one point I did know what JPEG stands for.
You just need to know what it is and when to use it, right? Like
Yes.
and that sort of is the key, but we live in a more well-rounded world when we, for whatever reason, know that it means Joint Photographic Expert Group.
Oh, I
And
definitely didn't.
well, because then that lets you know that didn't matter, right? Who cares,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
But and so knowledge is power. And so, I had a comment when like before, this is like 2 days ago when I just had like the live link available on YouTube, and somebody said something along the lines of, yeah, gerrymandering. Okay, we know it. And I'm like, well, not everyone does. And when they come across this, it'll be informative for them. And knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we talk about it, the more we discuss it, the more nuance we can gain from it. And so, anyway, I just wanted to address that. But let's take. Go ahead. What?
No, I'm delighted. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
I'm on board. I'm hooked.
I'm sort of just don't let me ramble. And your
Please.
audience is killer. Like every time you mention their names, I'm like, I know all these folks. Okay.
Oh, they're a hoot, man.
So this is what's good. Okay. This and I'm just gonna kind of bring it up so I can read it along as clearly as possible, because I know that this is sort of like zoomed out for everyone, and I apologize, but that's just more motivation for you to literally go check it out for yourself. So what we're looking at here is who draws the districts, and that's the Independent Redistricting Commission, the IRC, which for me is a lot easier to say. All those bullet points underneath that is just what that is.
Yeah.
And I think the more bullet points, the better, because this is essentially transparency, right?
Yes.
And then so it says, how are districts drawn? And now it tells you the process and the state level criteria. And that tells you even more transparency. Now, where it says state level criteria ranked yes, what does that mean?
I unfortunately cannot see what the actual words are on the screen. Let me.
Okay, it
pull it up even
says
more. Ranked, yes. I don't know what they're referring to. Ranked choice, maybe. We don't have that in Michigan.
I think maybe that's what it is. But there's also public hearings and timing. Now, this is big because, well, it's just under state level criteria. It's reflect the state's diversity and respect communities of interest. Now, to me, that's important because gerrymandering typically, in a negative way, affects communities of color. It's residential segregation and racially polarized voting patterns, especially in southern states, which means that they're targeting communities of color, and this becomes a more effective tool for having negative impacts on them. And it's basically just keeping white people in power.
Yeah, there. I mean, yeah.
Right. That's the whole thing, really. And then the public hearings is important because
You know,
there's. Go ahead.
go ahead. Yes, they are, and I don't want to interrupt that.
Well, I was just going to read what they have here, and it's because at least 10 public hearings, and this is Michigan, at least 10 public hearings throughout the state before the drafting process begins, at least 5 public hearings throughout the state for comment and proposed plans. Now, that's 15 public hearings just on whether, and so backing up to when I was saying, is there any need for redistricting at all? Well, these people are going to have 15 different hearings to decide that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the final plan must be adopted by November 1st.
And I do truly, first of all, I'm happy with the way my state did it. Second of all, one day we should do a detour from this conversation where we talk about how this came to be. Because it happened in 2018, this decision, and it took effect in 2020. And look at the changes in Michigan when we just got our voting sorted out. How we got there is something I think other states can take advantage of. To be continued. I do think it's entirely possible to get lost in the weeds, to have too much in. You should have all information available to you.
Yeah.
But the details of how this state did it and the specifics here and there don't necessarily matter as much. What matters is that fundamentally the way this is decided is separated from the people who benefit or are harmed by the decision. That's what you need to achieve in each state. And if your legislators are currently deciding what the districts are, that is what you need to change. And by the way, the way you change that is to talk to your legislators. Contact them regularly. I got a plan here if we get to that part. But the long and short of it is email them and make it clear that your vote in the primary will depend on whether or not they make a big deal about starting an independent redistricting commission.
Yeah, and that really is like, you guys find your state on that list, check it out. Do you need to go to battle or not? Right. And
Exactly.
then like, if not, good for you. But that you
and the person you
could.
write is specifically your state representative.
Yes, exactly. You know what sucks? I've already had opportunity to write all of the politicians where I am. Yeah, we had like a crisis with a dam breaking that was going to affect the drinking water. And I was like, oh man, now I'm like pen pals with Lindsey Graham. He got right back to me.
See,
it was a form letter, but he signed it.
Exactly. The Republicans are way more used to this. I get responses from the farthest right folks because it's been part of their culture for a long time to steer their politicians. Progressives have to learn from that. Be in contact with these folks as much as you can. Just remind them you're there and watching and judgmental and a little drunk.
Yeah, well, and when I was in Colorado, I would call. And now it's like, God, I could only imagine if I got him on the phone. I'd blow it. So I just stick to writing now. But
it'd be hard not to call him and see you next Tuesday.
Exactly. And so that's state legislative districts. And then you can see right at the end here, and this is the second of 2 pages, you can see congressional districts, the same deal.
Yes.
So nothing different there, which is fine unless you're where I am in South Carolina. And now we can look at what's bad. Who draws the districts? State legislature. That is not good. So this is where I sit up and go, okay, look at all the lack of bullet points under that, right? How districts are drawn, right? the process. It goes straight to congressional. It's so like so simple is not better in this case. So I understand what you were saying about like, if you look at Michigan's or Colorado's, there's a lot. You could get in the weeds, you could get lost in the details. So just focus on if it's an IRC or not. And then when you get here, you immediately know something's wrong because nobody's saying anything.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no
I
bullet
should
points.
clarify. You don't have to advocate for those specific things you saw in the previous bullet point, but
Yeah.
it's good that they're there
Yeah.
because what you have here is what it look. It's really simple to describe a law by saying the king decrees it.
Yeah.
Why? How is this decided? The king said so. Well, here we have our pseudo royalty.
And it gets worse. I mean, it's not only is it not an IRC, but the government can veto any plan. So let's say the governor was one party and the people deciding the districting or redistricting were another party. He could just veto that.
Yep.
There are no hearings on this, right? There's no state level criteria at all. There's no deadline. And so it's not like they have to be done before elections or anything like that. And it's just really bad.
I was
There,
playing basketball with Lindsey Graham the other day, and I thought we were playing make it, take it. But he made one shot and then took the ball and said it was his for all time, forever, and left.
right? It's that. That's what we're doing here. Or he just threw it to, his billionaire rooting for him the loudest in the stands and said, "You can have the ball. You win." And yeah, and
Yeah,
you say that's not
exactly.
how basketball is played. And it's like, I got news for you, Jake. It is now, right?
This
Um,
court is going to be destroyed for some reason. I don't have more funny stuff to say, actually.
it's okay. We can
Hoping
just
something was
always
there.
go right back to serious, boring stuff. Uh,
Fair enough.
Recent redistricting cycles were the first since the Supreme Court's 2019 ruling that gerrymandering for party advantage cannot be challenged in federal court. Is there any, this is funny, is there any validity to that ruling, or is it just another sign that the current Supreme Court is totally corrupt?
None at all. There,
Yeah.
there, there is no validity to that, and we need to, in my opinion, the answer for such arbitrary interpretation of the law is to say, fine, we'll we'll build new laws with that kind of interpretation in mind, and we'll keep enacting them. So, assuming we get a blue House, Senate, and White House, which in my opinion is what we need to make this happen in 2024, we need to then jump to the second part of the book, which is okay, these states have all been fighting for their lives. We know that not all of these states will be able to yada yada. Federal rules. Here are federal that those bullet points on the screen right now. You can decide what else you want to that's part of your or your redistricting process, but there's a minimum requirement, and they are X, Y, Z, yada yada yada.
So this another. So here it is. You can't really get involved in fixing gerrymandering without realizing, we have to fix other things, right? Like the Supreme
Yes.
Court needs to be fixed, Congress needs to be fixed. We can't just, you have to write letters, and you really should. If you don't have an independent committee doing your redistricting, then there's gerrymandering going on, and they're going to do their best to keep you from knowing about it and having any insight to that. And so we need to elect people who will do it the right way. And so this is, talk about getting in the weeds. This is where, okay, now you have to, this is big picture stuff. You do have to get involved on different levels. And so, it it might be fun to talk politics, but if you're going to start writing letters, then you realize this is a lot of work, and people could get discouraged by that, right? And
Mm.
so, let's go to the last slide. Federal reform can help counter gerrymandering, so Congress needs to act. Now, if you go to campaignlegal.org, which, that was one of your original links from your video, I believe.
Big fan.
So Yeah, and I mean, I'm just finding out about them from the first time through you and the Brennan Center through you, and okay, I saw the Washington Post had the clever headline about this is the best explanation. You're the Washington Post, so I
Ah,
already know plenty about
I'll take it.
what goes on. Yeah, I know. So using web tools to identify gerrymandering maps, establishing IRCs to create fair maps. 3, advocating for federal legislation to ban gerrymandering. We need to pass the Freedom to Vote Act to create a democracy that works for us all. So, these folks at this site, and I have to imagine other people do it, but let's just go with these guys. These guys make it easy. You can see in the bottom right, there's a little box called Documents where they give you a letter, which will help you get off on the right foot in
Yeah.
contacting. These sorts of resources are out there, right? Like form letters, and you just fill in certain names and then you sign it, right?
Yes, but let me be clear so we don't accidentally mislead.
Okay.
When you contact your whoever, all that happens is an assistant of theirs puts a line on a whiteboard somewhere in a column saying X many people told us they feel this way about that. It's practically yes or no. So you might be incredibly nuanced. You might be incredibly whatever. But if you write just one sentence, I want you to publicly support independent redistricting commissions and my vote in the primaries will depend on it. That's enough.
Oh,
And
okay.
it can be that broad, it can be a phone call, it can be an email. It doesn't matter. What matters is the repetition. So,
How many times
yeah,
should you do this?
I am of the belief that if you really care about it, once a week. If uh, once is enough to all right, your priest is going to come here. Once is enough to get to purgatory. Sure,
Okay,
you're,
sure.
you're not going to burn for that one, but if you really care, and if you're in an area where this is habitual, I would say once a week, and use technology to your advantage. Pre-write a bunch
Mhm.
of emails, the same email worded slightly different if you want to be clever. Schedule it to send, and you will have only really done 15 minutes of work on one day, but once a week for the next 3 months, your representative will get an email saying, just checking in. Have you done this thing yet?
There you go. And that frees up a little bit more time to work on something else. Now,
Yeah,
one way, I have some family members who love organizing because they treat it like, hey, everyone, come over.
exactly.
We'll hang out,
That's the
have some
way.
beers, we'll write our emails, we'll send it off, and then we'll watch a movie or keep hanging out and stop doing the political activism stuff, right? But this is another reason why I like your show, because I always ask people, can you whether it's Crystal Ball, Sam Cedar, whoever, can you inspire boots on the ground? Can you get people into action? And that's literally what your show is for. It's not just to
Hell
say,
yes.
here's what you can do, right? You're not just
Oh,
trying to change minds. You're saying, here's what you can do. And then they do it. So have you had direct feedback that that's worked? Have you seen results from your efforts?
I've had direct feedback that people have participated because of the show, which boy, you want to
Pretty
talk
cool.
about a moment where you get emotional about this sort of thing. That's it. Like that's the happiest news I could possibly hear. I haven't heard that we single-handedly did anything yet, but I'm a big believer that we should greedily take credit for the entirety of movements we're even slightly a part of to popularize them and to keep our energy up. So with Janet Protasiewicz, I had somebody tell me they donated $5 to her. I had somebody told me that they volunteered to help her out. And were they the ones that managed to sway Wisconsin to put her in the Supreme Court? Yes, they were. So that's what I choose to believe.
Sure, why not? That's cool though, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the sense that you wouldn't stop doing this just because you didn't get that direct feedback, but because what I'm hearing is any feedback at all is rewarding, right?
I mean, it is, and I have a special. I have a special thing wrong with me that I truly enjoy when somebody just guts me. When somebody's like, "Look at this silly son of a,"
It's
and by the
admirable.
way, credit to Wicked Foxy Dragon, who says Jake must have forgotten about when I emailed my people and a gun law passed, but was
Oh,
then vetoed. It was vetoed,
wow.
Foxy. I'm sorry.
Hey, one step forward, two steps back is still one step forward, if you ask me. You got to
Fair
do
enough.
something. Yeah, you got to do
Fair
something.
enough. I do believe, broadly speaking, and I think this will go a long way to explain the tone of the show. We're gonna take some hits to the face, and we're gonna throw some punches that are not knockouts. They're just jabs. But the point is to fight vigorously. So and Foxy's right. I should have given her credit there. It's the fight that matters. It's the constant struggle and it's the constant pressure. And take solace in the fact that if you feel lazy, it's because you're a human being. And that means all of our enemies, all of the people trying to do evil things in the world, they're also human beings and they are also lazy. And they will give up if you don't.
So I just want to, well said. I just want to reiterate and maybe further explain the Freedom to Vote Act is landmark piece of federal democracy reform legislation. It apparently has already passed the House, represents a major step toward curbing political gamesmanship in map drawing. The bill would enhance transparency, strengthen protections for communities of color, and ban partisan gerrymandering in congressional districts. South Carolina would look like Michigan. It would also improve voters' ability to challenge gerrymandered maps in court. And with redistricting now beginning in many states, the need for Congress to pass reform legislation is more urgent than ever. Fair representation depends on it. Now, this is the thing is, let's say it doesn't pass. Well, we now know what we want to pass. We know what it looks like, right?
That's it.
So it is one step forward, and that two steps back doesn't discount the one step forward. It just doesn't.
Yeah. And then everything that goes wrong after that point. If you make a big deal about not having gerrymandered districts anymore, okay, if that fails, everything that goes wrong in the state, the people who remember hearing about gerrymandered districts will be like, is this because of that? Is this because we have the wrong people in
Right.
charge?
Right.
It will snowball. And at the end of the day, the correct argument, the correct way to do things will prevail. And because it's the correct way. And you will eventually people will eventually insist that things be done well, assuming there's somebody there advocating for it.
Right. That's the thing. And it could be you. So here's the thing, you guys. Last piece of advice: follow Jake. Watch, subscribe to the channel.
If you're
The
watching on
entire
WYCD, same for the Letterhack.
There you go. The entire video is available in the link to this description. I want all of my viewers and anyone who comes across this video to check out the whole thing and tune into Jake because he covers a lot of stuff, a lot of topics, a lot of issues, and a lot of what's going on. And always includes what you can do. It's the name of the show. And so it's proving to be one of my favorite and most valuable resources. It's a go-to. I now think that if I have some topic I want to know more about, I can just Google it and with the name of your show and wait for it to come up.
If you want a custom done, like in 2 minutes,
Oh,
like video sent to you, just order it and it will be done.
okay, there you go. That's awesome. So I may very well start showing more of your stuff on this show. And if you don't already have it, I'm pretty confident that if it's important enough to everyone, you would cover it, which is
Completely.
pretty cool. Okay,
Thank you.
now we're getting to the part of the show where we take a hard left, which is new terminology, which I like because this is a
Hell yeah.
lefty show, right? So let's take a
Hell
hard
yeah.
left. Let's change subjects completely. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't have the hard left terminology from day one, but it's here now. We're gonna take a hard left and start talking about comic books. Have you ever read comic books ever?
I'm
Okay,
somewhat familiar.
I mean, you know Bruce Timm, so
oh yeah, but that's that's from the artistry that was Batman the Animated Series, and then the greater DC animated universe.
yeah.
If
Oh,
you're
you got some.
talking,
Oh wow!
if you're
Come
talking
on!
recommendations, brother man,
Wow!
I think
Nice.
actually specifically with the Silver Age era, I think that's when you start getting into the comics being. I know you specifically say they're not all just about weird monsters slugging it out,
Right.
but when you come down to what we want to see at the end of the day, what's the itch that we all have that needs scratching?
Yeah.
Weird monsters slugging it out is
Yeah.
basically it. And I think it's beautiful that artists in that age were like, okay, this is what people will buy these comics for. But then we can use the fact that we know they're going to be there watching. Let me pull this up one more time. The pitch, watching this Batman and the Martian fight what appear to be a bunch of Swedes. There, we'll then have like a discussion also about something important, like the X-Men did, etc., etc.
Right.
But if you're talking just crunchy, what I enjoy, Scud, the disposable assassin.
Oh, I haven't even heard of that. Where?
Oh,
Who publishes that? Is it independent or?
I think it's independent. It was from the 90s. Dan Harmon's friend wrote it.
Scud.
And
Is it just CUD?
I'm going to do something mildly shameful, and I'm going to send you right now in the private chat the link. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm sure there's a way we can.
I've seen this. Okay, I've seen it at least. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So is
But
this the guy that did Earthworm Jim?
no, but it's very similar. This guy is actually a bit of a lefty, and
Okay.
he is Rob Schraub. That's who it is.
Okay.
And the concept he does that very Silver Age thing where this is just like how like old school Blade fought Dracula with wooden knives, like
Yeah.
that kind of a gimmick.
Yeah.
But he does talk about corporate corruption and being heartless in capitalism, and the main character is an assassin which you buy from a vending machine for 3 francs
Oh,
that realizes that it's designed to explode after it completes its assassination. So it, instead of completing
nice.
it, puts his victim in the hospital and then has to work to pay the hospital bills because if that thing dies, he explodes.
I'm all over
And
this.
it's
Say no
amazing.
more. That sounds
I'll
great.
give you one more little taste. Rob
Okay.
Schraub's. It's almost as much fun for just reading the last page of every comic, because Schraub has a sense of humor that's darker than Wesley Snipes. It's I was pushing it, but he says literally send hate mail to, and then gives his letter for his address for fan mail. It's the best.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I think that that sounds cool. I've never heard of it. So, geez, thanks for
Oh, my
recommending.
pleasure.
Yeah.
You got.
How? So
I
cool.
do wonder. What am I reading next? Tell me.
Okay, check this out. and see if I can get this to work right. Richard Stark's
Ooh.
Parker, Slayground. Now, let me explain. Uh, Richard Stark is a pen name for a guy named Donald Westlake. Have you ever heard of Parker, first of all?
No.
Okay. Parker is a fictional character created by an American novelist, Donald Westlake, the late Donald Westlake. A professional robber specializing in large scale, high profit crime. Parker is the main protagonist of 24 of the 28 novels. So there's a couple of novels that, he sat it out, but they're
I
very,
like that
after
already.
28, it's going to get kind of formulaic. So you got to have them sit it out, right? A couple of
And
times.
and they, eventually you want to see what Robin does when Batman's away.
Exactly. And so Parker's one of those criminals you tend to root for because he has a code of ethics, right? So, he's a bad guy. He's a murderer and everything, but only,
Ooh.
I mean, he'll only snap a guy's neck without thinking twice if they really deserve it.
Fair
And
enough.
the books are written like the characters act, like very classy, witty, focused. They're very good. You could burn
I
through.
love
I
it.
mean, I read all 28 in a couple of weeks when I finally discovered them. They've been reprinted a number of times, so they're accessible. But I'm recommending this book because Parker treats his fellow contract criminals like mechanics. That's what he literally calls them. He's got the
Ooh,
safe cracker, the getaway driver, they're mechanics. And so he
I
says,
love
well,
it.
let me get the right mechanics for this job, right? And so that's where I was like, well, I called you in to talk about something, right? Like you're a mechanic in this
Hell yeah.
situation. So kind of
Ooh.
cool, right?
Oh,
So
we're gonna borrow that.
I was trying
We're
to
gonna
connect
borrow
the
that.
dots. Um, and so anyway, the comic books were adapted and illustrated by the late Darwin Cook. Now he was an artist, and he's also a fan favorite, which means he could do literally anything and it would be amazing. He specialized in 50s and 60s era comics. He had a comic called DC New Frontier, and he writes about, which is from JFK, famous JFK speech. And so he sets it all like in that period and goes like through the decades. So it's pretty cool.
Yes.
He dissects the whole DC history, putting them in the era they were created. And that's what I always say is like, if you're going to adapt a Spider-Man movie, place it in 1963, the year the comic book debuted. I think that would be cool to see it as a period piece. And so he did that
Yeah.
in the comics. And so when he decided to do the Parker books, everyone sat up. If you never heard of Parker, you suddenly wanted to know all about it. And if you had heard of Parker, you were like, this is literally the only guy who's going to be able to pull this off. There were 4 of these hardback books, but then there are several collections. A new collection just came out. So you can read all the stuff he ever did, plus some like short installments he did in between. Slayground, the reason I'm jumping in here, this is like the third of 4 books. Maybe it's 5. I can't remember. But it's typically the more accessible version of his stories. He's in it deep right away. A job has gone wrong and he's on the run and he hides out in like a closed down carnival for the season. And so how do you get out of there? Right?
Oh,
So
fantastic.
so it's one of those things that like it's a real page turner, but it's not a long book anyway. That's why I say you'll kill it in like a day. So if you like this book, just know that there are plenty of them. And like I said, he's a real classy guy. He's always
You
like,
know that's got me.
yeah, like
Lupin the third, yeah.
he's got to
That's
make
I
sure he
love it.
has like, the right look all the time.
Yes.
So
Even
very
even
cool.
this also sounds very Robin Hood inspired in that it's like
Sort of, yeah.
the bad stuff he does is to bad guys. They let you know up front. No, no, no. He's taking high value things. All right.
Yeah.
So he's not stealing from your grandma. Cool.
He would, but here's the thing. His main goal is to set himself up enough to not have to do it. That's what he does.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then he has a certain place that he lives in like the off season. He'd really rather not have to do a big job. And so it's just
See,
a matter of time before they pull him back in.
you talk about the difference between liking the character and liking stories about the character. You put it better than that, unfortunately. I don't
Well,
remember.
because you like a character doesn't mean you like
There it
the
is.
character.
Exactly.
It's like I don't agree with Batman, but I love those books.
Exactly. It's so in
This
this
is that.
case,
Yeah.
the appeal, yeah, and it sounds like the author does a good job of making sure you are given a safe, you're given permission to like a character
Yeah.
without having to like the character, because they're like, don't worry, we're only going to pit him up against the things that you won't feel too bad about, and if you do feel bad about it, maybe he will too, and you'll explore that together.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, there's a comic book recommendation for you. Thanks
Great
for
recommendation.
recommending one to me. That's awesome. Because you're right. It's like I try and get people on here and bring them to comics in a way that I think will work. Right. It's like I'm addicted. Maybe you could be addicted too, but I know you're
Hell yeah.
not going to be like buying 10 issues of DC and Marvel superhero comics every week. So I got to recommend something. And this is a way for me to let them know that the medium is so it's capable of so much more.
First of all, yes. Second of all, can I hot seat you one more time?
Sure. Yeah.
Because comics are your thing, producing's my thing.
Okay.
What if you were going to produce a comic, or just order a show or a movie or whatever made from a comic? What style would you want it done in that you think has not been utilized? For example, I think, even though I don't like necessarily anime set in high schools, I think it's criminal that there's a whole genre that's about high school kids learning to mix it up with unique powers, and we haven't done that with X-Men yet.
Yeah. Or I mean, they
So
tried and failed. It wasn't really good.
yeah,
The
but
New
like
Mutant stuff. But yeah.
they're just starting to, like with Kitty Pride learning that, oh, phasing through things isn't dumb. I can actually be super rad with this. I want to see that done by like a proper, like Akira Toriyama taking a whack at
Hmm.
X-Men. What is a style of presentation you would like to see a comic book adapted to, and what would the comic book be?
Well, have you seen the newest Indiana Jones?
No, but I want to.
Have you seen The Godfather 2?
Yes.
Okay. There are scenes in New York City. Remember when De Niro as Vito Corleone is running across the rooftops
Yes.
and he's following the boss in the parade and he's going to meet him at his house and take him out? The way the city looks, that period, right? Like it looks very authentic. And there's no way they could have CGI'd that,
Yeah.
right? It's this, what, 76, something like that?
Yeah. It didn't
So
exist.
yeah. So then you look at this newest Indiana Jones movie and all the shots of them, again, it's a parade, they're in the city. It made me think of it. The way it looked, I was like, this should be the Superman movie. It should take place in like the 50s or something, right? Like I would love to see that. And I'm so tired of the CGI should be applied to make it look authentic, not amazing, because you
Yes.
fall short of that, right? So if you're
Exactly.
using it to make something look authentic, we'll believe everything else without you having to hold our hands. But so that's just something I would like to see in general. Now I'm really off on the whole movies and TV thing, but I'm such a massive Hellboy fan that I cannot help but, and I've
Well,
made
you
some
carried him
Hellboy
for a
comics.
while.
What's that?
Well, you carried him for a while.
Well, yeah, exactly. I gave him a piggyback, right? So and I've been on podcasts talking about Hellboy at length, and it always comes up. They should do a show for one of their spinoff titles called the BPRD. And the way they should do that is my guest from last Wednesday, Mark Tweedale, has like a mind palace of the reading order for those comics, and he knows it inside and out. He knows the characters really well. First of all, bring him on. He's either a consultant or one of the showrunners, right? Now, he's so modest, he'll tell you he shouldn't be, but he should be. He's wrong. He should be involved. And the way I would do it is the majority of the BPRD takes place without Hellboy. the main run of the title, which ended, so they could do the whole thing start to finish because that series is over. They flashing to Hellboy every now and then where he is at the time, which was hell, because Hellboy dies and goes to hell. It's called
Ooh.
Hellboy in Hell. That was a whole separate series. Flashing to that every now and then would be enough for people to be like, oh my God, they showed Hellboy in Hell. When are they going to show that again? It's these one-off episodes to keep you reminding you it's in the Hellboy universe. Meanwhile, the BPRD is the perfect group of characters. They've never done it right in the movies. I'm not sure they ever will. It's the perfect group of character dynamics and storyline that will keep people engaged for at least 5 seasons without being like, oh, they jumped the shark, because they don't, because there's a start to finish, and it's not anything that you couldn't do. You might not do the whole thing, but you could do the majority of it and take you through the lives of these characters. And it's ridiculous to think that they all make it. You know what I mean?
That's first of all, yes, wholeheartedly behind that, and second of all, that's a very good premise for the television format because
Yeah.
the you are going to want to see them scramble to fill the void left by their equivalent of Superman, essentially.
Right.
Um, and watching
Exactly. That's
them
exactly it.
watching them get better over time is going to be an amazing arc, and then you hit them with like, this is the first thing that would have made Hellboy sweat, and now you
Yeah.
idiots got to do it. That I would love to see.
Yeah, it's
Fantastic.
fascinating. And then, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. And of course I could go on forever and it would just start to sound more and more like a foreign language and bore everyone into the ground. But they don't really start BPRD by saying this is the year. This is when it takes place. Then the sense of time, it's like, how long has this been going? A year? I don't even know. And they'll say, oh, we're a couple of years in, or a couple of months ago this happened. And you're like, okay, so there is some sense of time, but it's not relevant. It's not important. No, I always thought that was unique and something that would free you up for a show to not have to be like, oh, it's every episode's the next day. It's not like that. You just start it off, So I thought that was cool.
I agree. I don't like when they give unnecessary information for that reason. I'm like, why did we spend so much time showing the sun set and rise again? I can assume time passed if the character is eaten,
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I would do. And make movies set
pitch.
in the period that the character was originally created in. Superman would be the 30s, Spider-Man would be the 60s, the Fantastic Four would be the 60s. I think that'd be really fun. And CGI.
And then you get to see what, like, how does I'm dying to think of a superhero that was invented in the 80s. How does Spawn, I'm sorry, we're going to cross over. How does Spawn interact with like very old Superman? Like that would be fun to see.
Yeah, sure. Why not? And I do think that, and somebody said, what's BPRD? It's a Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense. So there I go using, abbreviations and whatnot without telling people what it means. But, CGI and special effects to make it look authentic, not spectacular, I think is the key to what's wrong. And my guest, Mark Tweeda, also said that people are using plot and not story to adapt comic books to movies. And that isn't right. It's like, you're just putting like the basics on there. And then it's like, and this is going to blow your mind when you see the actors we got and the way the effects happen. And that is not how you do
missing the point.
Yeah.
Can I just say, your concept of setting things when the actual comic came out is so good, and you can do so much with it. Imagine it occurred to me. It's 20 years into Superman's career. He's in his prime or whatever.
Yeah.
It's filmed like it's the 1950s. Like you imagine you use the actual like camera and what have you, but you still have CGI. You just go out of your way to not make it look like CGI. You make it look like it's something that happened there and got picked up by 1950s movie cameras. That would be amazingly fun.
And so you look at it like, okay, they did a Superman TV show with George Reeves. It was black and white, and it was kind of like that, but they also had a cartoon earlier than that that looked even more like what I'm talking about. You see what
Yeah,
I'm
he's like
saying?
punching the laser.
Yeah.
Like I'll never forget. He's flying into the laser, and he punches the laser back. And I'm like, okay, okay, this is gonna be
They
fun.
and so they used effects to make that look more authentic. They used rotoscoping. They had
Yes.
actual actors acting it out. And so that's why it looks so cool. And that's why it's so memorable because it wasn't just a cartoon. Anyway, there's ways to do it that
Hell
they
yeah.
don't. They're trying to make a quick buck. They're trying to franchise. That's the goal. And that's why I'm off it. And I always say,
Yeah.
get
I'm
yourself a
glad we
book.
I am glad we did it because after those series of increasingly ridiculous Batman movies, I'm glad for you're gonna be a little annoyed. I'm glad the Marvel universe happened.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah. I mean, it's fun at least, but
yeah,
yeah.
it was fun, and we just like there's a whole generation of people that just wanted a movie version of what essentially the cheap comic books are. The stuff where you maybe pick up an issue where it's halfway through a story arc and you never finish it, but you enjoyed it. I'm glad we
Yeah.
did that. It's just capital being what it is now. I think everybody's like, all right, that's enough. We've had our fill. Let's get serious.
Well, and I got news for everyone who's a fan of the movie, but not the comics. They're doing the same things to keep you on the hook that they did in the comics in the movies. And I've seen it a million times and it won't end. And they'll always just take
Never.
your money and they'll
Yep.
change things and you'll be like, oh, you ruined it.
But
The
see,
books
that's
are always
good.
there. Yeah.
Now movie only people have like an idea of what that's like. So when you say like, okay, so you have to understand, at the time Hellboy was dead. He comes back later, but that's not important right now. Now they get it. Now they'll get it.
Right. I'm just looking up something on Kowalski's behalf here. So he says Superman's all right, even though he's from Kansas. Ralph Dibny, the elongated man, is from Nebraska. Yeah,
Boom.
classic superhero, kind of like Plastic Man, a little bit different. He's an actual detective. So
Yeah.
anyway, the elongated man from
And
Nebraska, right
and
up your alley.
much sadder story.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so you really have read comics. It's super cool, man.
Hell yeah.
Um.
Where's Dr. Light from? I bet if he's from South Carolina, you guys are gonna have beef.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. And then there was the female version. But anyway, there are so I mean, we could talk about this longer than gerrymandering if we're not careful. So let me just
Damn.
remind people there's a bunch of links in the description of this podcast. The main thing you want to do is continue to watch or watch the full video from Jake. It's all there. Everything we talked about is there. And we got to have you back on, Jake. I'm sure other
Hell
things are
yeah.
going to come up where we need to discuss them in detail, and we'll do this. It'll give me a chance to put on the old shirt and tie combo, and I'll
Hell
mix it
yeah.
up a little. Um,
When we do the wrestling thing, you and I we gotta be like announcers. We
Yeah, we
gotta
already look like sports podcasters because the
hell
headphones
yeah.
and the mics. I love it. I really do. Like this is what I have in mind when I hear people do podcasts. No, this is how comic book artists used to dress when they would go to work originally.
Boom.
It's the
Doesn't it?
coolest thing. Yeah.
How rad is that? We can all be this, folks. Put on your little black dress. Let's go have a beer.
Yeah, and you don't have to do it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, hang
Just
out with the kids with Liberty
yeah.
Spikes too. Just blow some minds. It's important. Look, it's important that the folks that wear suits be kept a little bit. I mean, the folks that wear very expensive suits
Yeah.
be kept a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
Just be like, I might not be. Hey, maybe not everyone in this room is on your side, devil. Like it's good to
Yeah.
keep them nervous.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Okay, so links in the description of this podcast. Truly encourage everyone to look at campaignlegal.org and also the Brennan Center for Justice. Look up that 50 state guide to redistricting and see what your state's up to and whether or not you need to get involved. And once you get involved, you'll realize that's just the first step. There's lots of things that need reform and there's lots of ways to stay engaged. And that's what you can do is for and why you should pay attention. So, Jake, thanks for coming on. Is there anything else
honor.
that you'd like to talk about or plug or what do you got going on?
Let's just do
When do you
this.
stream?
I stream every night except for Sunday at 9 p.m. And we'll figure out when the wrestling inspired debate stream is going to happen. I got one more thing. We'll make it super quick.
Okay.
At the count, like so, going 3, 2, 1, boom. Can you just say your favorite episode at the same time? Say your favorite episode of Star Trek, any series. Tell me when you got it.
I don't know the name of it. Do I get a chance to look up the actual official name? Because you
Yes,
just want to
yes.
see if we both say the same one, right?
Absolutely. And I'm hoping we say the same one, but I'm gonna write down what I think yours is.
Oh, okay. No, that's sounds like the paranormal game. I don't know if you've ever played that.
I haven't.
Um,
All right. I have my prediction for what you'll say, but I'm hoping we say the same one.
okay, I don't know. This is
All right.
All right.
So
Okay.
it's after 1, then we go.
And
All right.
what do I just say? The title?
We just say the title of the episode.
Okay. All right.
3, 2, 1. In the
Space
pale
Seed.
moonlight.
Oh.
But
That was
what
the
did I
line from
write
Batman.
down?
Yeah.
The goddamn flute one.
Oh, okay.
Was that Space Seed?
No,
where
Space
Picard
Seed
learns-
is the original series.
Ooh.
Season 1, episode 22. This is where they introduce the character Khan from The Wrath of Khan. Yeah.
Of course.
It's the original. Because I
Okay,
remember
fair enough.
when the movie came out, I was like, oh my God, it paid off being a nerd. I've seen this on TV already.
Yes.
I already know this character. So
That's baller. That
was
had to
big
be
for
a
me.
moment.
Yeah. it
Thank
was
you
good.
for having me, man.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It was fantastic. And I want to thank everyone for being here. Come back Wednesday night at 8 p.m. where I have Box Brown on
Ooh.
to talk about his comic book, The He-Man Effect, and how 1980s toys sold you your childhood. So anyway,
I'm excited.
and yeah, that's going to be a good one. Box Brown is always really good. He does graphic documentaries. That's what they call his books. And that
like
term, although I knew it, I didn't know it by that term. So really
It's a good term.
interesting stuff. Yeah. And just reading that book sends you off on, you're going to be YouTubing and Googling tons of stuff and also going down Nostalgia Boulevard, which is always fun too. So that is Wednesday at 8 p.m. Follow me on Twitter at the Letterhack and Friends of Strackbein on Instagram. All the links to my social media are also in the description of this podcast. And that's where you will see the final art that I did of Jake tonight once I touch it up off air in post and the work in progress. And stay tuned for more clips because we're definitely going to be clipping stuff from this one. Jake, thank you once again. I really do appreciate it. We'll see everybody next time.